Have you ever done a small act of kindness, not knowing it would echo louder than anything you imagined? Sometimes a single moment of compassion sets off a chain of events no one could predict. That's exactly what happened when a teenager offered help to a drenched, stranded biker on a stormy evening. What seemed like a simple good deed turned into a scene straight out of a movie the next day. Roaring engines, leather jackets, and a message that respect runs deeper than appearances. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. This story isn't just about motorcycles or rebellion. It's about loyalty, unexpected brotherhood, and how one gesture changed everything. The sky cracked open with thunder as heavy rain lashed against the small town's quiet streets. Most people stayed indoors, curled up with warm drinks or glued to their screens. But on the edge of town, near an old gas station long out of service, someone was out there, soaked, stranded, and trying to flag down help. It wasn't the kind of night anyone would want to be caught in, especially not on a motorcycle. The roads were slick, the wind was howling, and the dark made everything feel like a scene from a thriller. At that moment, a teenager named Kyle was on his way home from a part-time job, hoodie soaked through, when he noticed the figure struggling with a motorcycle on the roadside. Most would keep walking, eyes down, pretending not to see, but Kyle stopped. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was something deeper, but that decision would be the beginning of something unforgettable. The rainstorm wasn't just weather that night. It became the setting for a story that would be retold for years in that town. Kyle wasn't known for taking risks. He was quiet, kept his head down at school, and avoided confrontation whenever possible. But something about the stranded biker pulled at him. The man was massive, drenched, with tattoos crawling up his neck and rings glinting on every knuckle. His motorcycle looked heavy and expensive, now leaning dangerously on its kickstand while the biker tried to adjust something near the engine. The biker didn't ask for help. He didn't say a word, but the frustration in his eyes said plenty. Instead of walking away, Kyle approached with caution. "You need a hand?" he asked, unsure if it was bravery or foolishness that made him speak. The biker turned slowly, eyes narrowing. But then something unexpected happened. He nodded. No threats, no attitude, just a silent acknowledgement. That moment, short and awkward, sparked a silent understanding. In a world that often judged by appearances, Kyle saw someone in need, not just a biker. That was the first thread in a bond neither of them realized was forming. The biker's name wasn't shared that night. He barely spoke, only gesturing and occasionally mumbling under his breath while trying to fix a snapped clutch cable. His leather jacket was soaked, his boots caked in mud, and the cold rain made every movement stiffer. Kyle helped hold a flashlight, offered his hoodie as a cover for the exposed wires, and asked no questions. The biker didn't give much in return, just a grunt here and there, and a glance that said, "You're all right, kid." It was clear the man wasn't just some drifter. The customized Harley, the detailed patches, the way he moved, it all screamed experience. Yet there he was, vulnerable in the rain, accepting help from a kid he didn't know. That roadside scene was something rare, two very different people, generations apart, connected by a shared humanity in the middle of a storm. Kyle had no idea that behind the gruff silence was a man with powerful ties and a loyalty few could understand. After half an hour in the rain, Kyle realized the man was freezing. His house wasn't far, just a few blocks through side streets. "You can warm up at my place. Just till this lets up," he offered. It wasn't said with fear or hesitation, just quiet kindness. The biker studied him for a moment, as if trying to judge whether the offer was genuine. Eventually he gave a single nod. No thanks, no smile, just acceptance. Kyle led the way, heart pounding, but steady. Back home, Kyle's parents were working late. The house was quiet except for the hum of the heater. Kyle handed the biker a towel, made some instant coffee, and pointed him to the couch. For the first time, the biker spoke a full sentence. "You didn't have to do this." Kyle just shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." That moment, more than any other, left an imprint. In a world where people feared each other too easily, this gesture, simple, honest, wouldn't be forgotten. The warmth of the house melted some of the tension. The biker sipped his coffee slowly, steam rising around his weathered face. He didn't smile, didn't relax fully, but his shoulders dropped a little. Kyle didn't press for conversation. Instead, he turned on a small space heater and sat across the room, scrolling through his phone, pretending things were normal. It was a quiet night filled with unspoken appreciation. Neither of them realized how rare that kind of silence was, comfortable, not awkward. As the storm continued outside, the biker eventually asked for Kyle's name. "Thanks, Kyle," he said with a nod. Still no name offered in return. But somehow that didn't matter. A few hours passed. The rain started to die down and the biker stood. "I owe you," he said simply. Kyle walked him to the door, unsure what he meant or if he'd ever see him again. But the air felt different, as if something had shifted in the universe. Waiting to return the favor. Just before midnight, the biker left. He didn't give his name, didn't ask for anything else. He just gave Kyle one last look, then fired up the now functional bike with a roar that shook the windows. The sound echoed into the distance as he disappeared into the misty streets. Kyle stood on the porch, unsure what had just happened. It all felt surreal, like part of a story he hadn't finished reading yet. He stayed there for a while, staring at the rain-drenched road, wondering if any of it had meaning. Inside, the towel still hung damp, and the half-drunk coffee sat cooling on the table. Kyle cleaned up, thinking about the man's eyes, not threatening, not even thankful, just aware. It wasn't until he went to bed that the weight of the night really hit him. He'd helped someone most people would fear, and he didn't even get a name. But deep down, Kyle knew it wasn't the end of it. Something about the biker's silence spoke volumes. Like a promise unspoken. By the next morning, whispers started floating through the neighborhood. Someone had seen a biker leaving Kyle's house. Another claimed they heard loud engines late at night. Small towns have a way of turning small things into big rumors. Kyle kept quiet. He didn't owe anyone an explanation, and he wasn't even sure how to explain it if he tried. Most people wouldn't understand offering your home to a total stranger, let alone one covered in leather and mystery. Still, the curiosity spread. Some classmates asked odd questions. A few adults gave Kyle strange looks, but Kyle stayed steady. He didn't feel like he had done anything wrong. If anything, he felt proud, like he'd followed some deeper truth, one that didn't need explaining. The real story hadn't even started yet, but the air was already buzzing with a sense of something unusual coming. And then, just as the rumors began to fade, something happened that no one could have predicted. The next morning began like any other until the sound came. It started as a distant rumble, like thunder returning, but it wasn't weather this time. It was louder, deeper, with a rhythm that made the windows vibrate. Kyle stepped out onto the porch and froze. Down the main road, one by one, motorcycles rolled in, glinting chrome, roaring pipes, leather jackets. Not 2 or 3 dozens. At least 40 riders moving together in a tight, disciplined formation, and they were coming straight toward his house. Neighbors peeked out from curtains. Some ran inside. The sight was intimidating, surreal, like a scene from a movie. Kyle stood still, hands shaking just a little, not out of fear, but disbelief. What could this possibly mean? Why here? Why him? But deep inside, he knew it had to be connected to the night before. The biker had said, "I owe you." And whatever this was, felt like a return on that debt, louder and larger than anything Kyle imagined. The riders didn't just arrive. They performed. The formation circled the block in perfect unison, chrome flashing in the morning sun, engines revving in harmony. They parked in a half-moon around Kyle's front yard, dismounted with the grace of soldiers. It was a silent display of presence and power, but not aggression. The lead rider, older, scarred, and solemn, stepped forward and removed his helmet. It was him, the biker from the night before. Only now he wasn't alone. He was part of something much bigger. Kyle stepped forward, unsure of what to say. Before he could speak, the man raised a hand. "You helped one of us," he said loud enough for all to hear. "We don't forget that." The statement was simple, yet it sent a chill down everyone's spine. The others nodded silently behind him, eyes locked on Kyle, not with suspicion, but with respect. What had begun in the rain was now being repaid in steel, leather, and loyalty. For a few surreal minutes, Kyle's house became the most guarded place in town. The Hells Angels didn't block roads or cause chaos. They simply stood there, silent and still, like statues made of thunder and history. Some neighbors filmed from behind curtains. Others locked their doors. But inside the eye of the storm stood Kyle, utterly calm, because somehow he understood what was happening. This wasn't a warning. It was a salute. The leader stepped forward and handed Kyle a leather patch, small, embroidered, but unmistakable. "This means you earned respect," he said. No one else spoke. No one needed to. Kyle looked down at the patch, then up at the men who came just to show honor. The moment burned into his memory. He had offered warmth to a stranger. In return, he was given something few ever receive from this group: recognition. And with that, the engine started again, one by one. As the thunder rolled back down the road, at first, Kyle's parents were overwhelmed with fear. They had returned home just minutes after the bikers left, only to find their front lawn marked with tire streaks and neighbors whispering nervously. Kyle explained everything about the rain, the biker, the help he offered. First, they didn't believe him. But once they saw the small leather patch and heard the sincerity in his voice, their worry turned into quiet awe. What kind of man brings dozens of riders to honor a teenager? Word spread quickly across town. Social media blew up with grainy videos of the bikes, the formation, and Kyle standing among them like something out of a legend. Fear was slowly replaced with respect. People began to realize this wasn't a threat. It was a message. Kyle hadn't just helped someone. He had touched a nerve in a community most people misunderstood. The Hells Angels weren't there to scare. They were there to honor a kid who did something most adults wouldn't. Later that week, Kyle received a package. Inside was a new leather vest with the same patch the biker had given him stitched onto the back. There was no note, no explanation, just that one piece of clothing. He didn't wear it around town, not wanting to draw attention, but he kept it carefully in his closet like a badge of honor. He knew enough not to pretend he was one of them, but he also understood what it meant to be acknowledged by them. Weeks passed and Kyle spotted the same biker at a gas station. This time the man smiled. They shook hands. No words exchanged, just mutual recognition. It wasn't friendship in the usual sense. It was something deeper, a bond forged in rain, silence, and loyalty. That handshake carried weight like a promise. Kyle may not have joined the biker world, but he had earned a sliver of their respect, and once earned, that kind of respect doesn't fade. The phrase, "You help one of us," carried more than just gratitude. It was a code among the Hells Angels and similar brotherhoods. Loyalty runs deeper than most can imagine. They live by an unspoken rule: stand by your own, honor those who show respect, and protect those who protect you. Kyle had unknowingly stepped into that world when he opened his door that rainy night. He didn't ask for anything in return. That made all the difference. To outsiders, the biker world seems harsh, intimidating, maybe even dangerous. But inside, it's governed by a strong, ancient code. By helping the stranded biker without judgment, Kyle honored that code. He showed character, not fear. That act echoed through the ranks like a ripple. And when the biker returned with his crew, it wasn't to cause trouble. It was to declare publicly that this boy was under their protection. In their world, that kind of declaration is rare and sacred. The Hells Angels logo, the winged death's head, is more than a symbol. It's a mark of brotherhood, loyalty, and identity. To wear that patch means you've earned a place in a world where trust is currency and betrayal is deadly. It isn't just for show. It's a vow. So when Kyle received that patch, even a small one, it wasn't a gift. It was a statement. He had acted like one of them, even if he didn't realize it. That patch was never meant for outsiders. But exceptions are made for those who prove their worth, not by force, but by action. Kyle's moment of kindness crossed that boundary. It was as if the angels were saying, "You may not ride with us, but you ride with our spirit." Few outside the Brotherhood ever received such a gesture. And while Kyle never wore it publicly, he understood its meaning deeply, a silent membership in something ancient, misunderstood. And real society often paints the Hells Angels with a single brush: outlaws, troublemakers, threats. But Kyle learned firsthand that there's more beneath the surface. What looks like rebellion is often protection. What feels like danger can be honor in disguise. These men may wear leather and roar down highways, but their loyalty is fierce, their bonds unbreakable, and their values surprisingly strong. Kyle's story broke that stereotype, even if just a little. For Kyle, the experience redefined what he thought he knew. He learned that brotherhood isn't always clean or polite. It's raw, real, and sometimes intimidating. But at its heart is a simple truth. People want to be seen, respected, and protected. And the ones society fears most might be the ones most willing to protect someone who shows heart. Kyle didn't just see the biker that night. He saw the man, and that made all the difference. After the shock wore off, Kyle's family began to understand the full weight of what had happened. His parents sat down with him and asked every question imaginable. "Were you scared? Why didn't you call us? Do you know what you've gotten into?" Kyle answered honestly. He hadn't planned anything. He just followed his gut. Eventually, their concern turned to quiet admiration. They realized their son had done something brave, not reckless but human. In the weeks that followed, his siblings started looking at him differently. The quiet, reserved boy had suddenly become the center of a story that sounded like legend. But Kyle didn't boast. He didn't retell the tale for attention. That humility impressed his parents more than anything else. They may not have fully understood the world of bikers, but they understood this. Their son had shown character in a moment that mattered, and that, to them, meant everything got at first. The neighbors were on edge. Some assumed Kyle had gotten involved with a gang. Others worried about safety. Rumors flew, some wild, others just misinformed. But over time, as the truth came out, the narrative shifted. People began to admire what had happened. Not many kids would invite a drenched stranger into their home, and certainly not someone most people would cross the street to avoid. The neighborhood began to soften. The same people who clutched their pearls at the sight of leather and chrome now had a different story to tell. Kyle had become a symbol not of rebellion but of bravery and kindness. He didn't try to explain himself to everyone. He just went back to his normal routine. But those who paid attention saw the change, a quiet confidence, a subtle strength. And even if they never said it out loud, the neighbors began to respect him. Too, within a few days, local reporters caught wind of the story. A few photos had already gone viral. One showing the bikers lined up in front of Kyle's house, another of the small patch in his hand. A reporter showed up at school asking for an interview. Kyle declined. He didn't want fame, just understanding. Still, the buzz grew. Online forums speculated about who the biker was, whether Kyle was in danger, and what the Hells Angels were really like. The attention faded quickly, as viral stories often do. But for those who lived in that town, it became local legend. Teachers used it as a talking point about kindness. Parents used it to teach their kids not to judge a book by its cover, and Kyle? He remained the same, still helping others, still quiet, still thoughtful. But he knew that part of him would forever be shaped by a single stormy night and the thunder that followed, though. Kyle never saw the entire biker crew again. He would occasionally spot one or two passing through town. They always gave a nod, a salute, or a small wave. It wasn't friendship in the way most teens experienced it. There were no video calls, no social media tags, just a deep, wordless respect that echoed across miles. Once he even found a note on his porch, "You're one of the good ones. Ride steady." No name, no explanation, just a message. That kind of connection doesn't fade. It shapes how you see the world. Kyle started helping more, noticing the ones others ignored: homeless veterans, tired cashiers, lost travelers. Not because he wanted attention, but because he realized the ripple of a good deed never ends. The rainstorm had brought more than water. It brought clarity that a small act of humanity can ripple outward, touching lives you never expected. And sometimes those ripples roar back like thunder. Kyle's story isn't just about bikers or teenage bravery. It's about the unseen threads that bind us all, the quiet moments when character is revealed. He didn't plan to be honored. He didn't expect a return. But in a world often guided by fear, his kindness stood out. It reminded people that respect is earned, not bought, and that even the most unlikely souls carry honor when treated with dignity. The legacy of that rainy night lives on in more than memory. It lives in the way Kyle holds himself, in the way the town remembers that formation of bikers, in the way people tell the story around campfires and in classrooms, proof that one moment, one choice can echo through time. And if you listen closely on stormy nights, maybe, just maybe, you'll hear the thunder of motorcycles riding in formation, not to intimidate, but to say, "We remember." What would you do if your small act of kindness caught the attention of an entire brotherhood? Could you recognize honor when it comes wrapped in leather and chrome? Stories like this remind us that legends aren't always born from grand battles. They often come from quiet choices made in the rain. If the story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true life tales and let us know in the comments. Have you ever helped a stranger not knowing what it might lead to? Would you have stopped that night? We'd love to hear your thoughts.